Hey there, Sheryl here. Today is such an exciting and special day. I can't even contain the excitement to be here with Gretchen O'Hara, now of Splunk. Gretchen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to get a chance to talk to you and everyone in the audience. So thanks for having me.
Of course, and I know we've been back and forth for a really long time, so this is super exciting.
We have. I'm so happy to be here.
So, before we get started and start talking about, the topic of the day, as far as how women in tech can really take these biases head on, I'd love to get to know a little bit about you and how did you get inspired to be such an amazing woman in technology, not just in your corporate career, but also being the co-founder of Women in Cloud. What in either inspired you to greatness, or what was a challenge that you had that you wanted to come up with a solution for?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think a lot about that at some times. I'm like, what sort of drives me to where I am today? And I think there's probably two things, sort of, two sides of the coin, right? I think, first of all, I had a grandmother. She was a teacher. She was, a working woman very much back in the day when I would say most women weren't actually even working. And I was always inspired to hear her stories and the importance of education, the importance of sort of even back then, sort of this equality that was something that she really instilled in me, that I had this sort of opportunity to do whatever I could do, and education would empower me to be able to have those choices. And I loved that sort of, one, she was a working woman. Two, she was very focused on, education and empowerment way back in the day. And I think it was just an inspiration on, hey, when you have education and when you get empowerment, you can kind of, sort of write what is important for you in the world. And that was sort of the start. But, the other thing on the other flip of that was I had many people when I was growing up in my family that pretty much were like, you can't do everything that you want to do, and you should be focusing on building a family and getting married, and why would you want to be doing this like hard career thing, and why do you even want to be working? You want to really be taking that time to dedicate with your children. And my whole thing is, I wanted to absolutely dedicate time to my children. I absolutely wanted to get married and have a family. I wanted all of that. So I'm not saying for anyone that wanted just that that's okay. I love that. My thought was like, why can't I do that? And why does it have to be an or? And I think the more that I was challenged on, I can't have a family and a career. I can't work and find a husband. All of these things. I kind of thought this was something that I'm going to sort of prove everybody wrong. And so I went on very early on saying it's an and, not an or, and you can have it all. And I think it's perfectly fine and appropriate. And now in this day and age, of course, we do. But that was early on. I think my inspiration was, sort of this combination of you can't and you can, and I'm going to prove that I can. And that's kind of where I started.
So that's interesting, and I really wanted to spotlight a couple of things that you said because they're so important. That sometimes the people that care about us the most and that love us the most can box us in.
That's right.
Because they want to keep us safe.
Such a good point. Such a good point on that, which I think is like, again, the best intentions, but not always sometimes your best advice because of that.
Yeah. So if you're feeling that way, I want you to take this story to heart. And also if you have something in your gut and your heart that you want to do. And then I just love this point that you brought up about going for it and doing it anyway. And you can do it in a way that still honors those people that are concerned for your safety. In other words, appreciating their concern and this and that. There's a good way, to do that. So thanks for sharing that, because just imagine if you decided to go the other way, there would be no Women in Cloud. And speaking of Women in Cloud, let's talk a little bit about how that came together, how you partnered up with Chaitra, which is a whole nother conversation. Like when I think of doer in the dictionary, I think her face
You think Chaitra actually shows up in that dictionary? I would probably 100% agree with you on that. In fact, I was at Microsoft, and Chaitra and I actually were in, I think, a bar. We were in a bar, and we had on a napkin, and she was like, I want to be able to do something where we can actually stop sort of this gender gap and really sort of to close this in women technology. And we started to ideate on this, and I love the idea, because where Chaitra was coming from wasn't about just education. It wasn't about just sort of creating a forum for discussion. It was actually about building sustainable change and building a pipeline of business that will actually keep women in business, as opposed to just having the conversation. And so this idea, I think, she had me at hello. And so from there on, I'm like, how do we go do this? And how do we do this at scale? And I've been so proud of the work that she's been leading and doing. Incredible, talented women across both the cohorts that we're bringing through to really help build that book of business as female leadership and entrepreneurship. But the allyship that's come in from all of our male counterparts, the connection across the technology industry, leaning in to do mentorship and sponsorship, and really a commitment to making sustainable change. And that's what it's about. And we're really just getting started, but it's an incredibly exciting opportunity, I think, for an organization to really start to make a difference as it relates to business opportunity, not just having the conversation around equality.
Yeah, that is super exciting. And it's always amazing to have someone on your side that does not take no for an answer.
That's right.
And she just sees the vision. So that is great. And congratulations and I think, are you encouraging us to go out and have a glass of wine and think something? No,
right.
I'm kidding. But sometimes, I joke about that, but it is really important that the best ideas come when we're relaxed and having fun. And if that involves a glass of wine, so be it. I think the play Hamilton was written, while the creator was on vacation on the beach. He came to him. And so that's just really important. I just wanted to shine kind of a light on that it's so important to recognize that idea was kind of birthed in a moment of levity.
Yeah, a moment of levity, and on a napkin, on a square napkin. And I think it's important to understand that, some of the best ideas, you don't have to wait to get everything together. I mean, it started with a simple idea on a napkin, and it's turned into 15,000 members strong and growing at a global pace. So I'm really excited about the partnership, the companies that have come in to partner with Women in Cloud, and certainly all of the members and contributors to really make a difference. It's been a super exciting journey.
Yeah, and you mentioned before we went live, there was a MLK quote that you mentioned that I think would be really apropos if you want to share it.
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I'll share it with the audience. I'm a huge fan of Martin Luther King Jr. ever since I was a kid. I think there's amazing leadership lessons across the board there. But one of the quotes that I really stuck with me was really the thought around, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just the first step. And it's really about, hey, what can you do in the moment? How can you see to take the very first step, the very first action? And everyone taking a step and everyone doing inaction accrues to amazing, great impact across the globe. And I think sometimes we have to wait till it's all done, or everything has to be figured out, or I can't just get started because I don't know what the next step is after my first step. And I think I encourage all of you, just take the first step. Just do the thing that feels right. Write down like one thing, one goal you're going to get accomplished, and go after it. And I think that is that inspiration to say, I don't have it all figured out. I don't know where we're going to get at the end of time, but I don't want to have inaction. I want to take action. I want to take action today. And it can be the very smallest of things that will have a ripple effect to make a significant impact. So I just encourage you, to just write it down, do something small, and those small things will accrue into a major, major wave.
100%. And just that forward motion tends to create a huge ripple effect. And so for anyone listening, and of course, if you're listening, please do ask questions if you're watching this live, or even if you're not watching it live after the fact, go ahead and drop questions in the chat. We'll make sure to answer those. But for someone watching, if they're thinking that they have something in their gut and their heart that they really want, that's really important to them, and it could be internally in their company or externally, but they know that they want some help and they want to partner up with someone, but they don't have that chaitra in their life. Can you recommend, how to, where can they find someone, and what would be the first step for that?
Yeah, I think, that's a really good question. There isn't always like this sort of magical place where it all comes along. But what I think that you'll find is there will be someone of like-minded interest in some way. It might be a colleague, it might be a friend, it might be an organization as you just decide to like go and sort of reach out. When you can make the decision, I want to go take action, I want to be able to go do this and contribute really to the change that I think is so important for women in technology. As soon as you start to sort of put that out in the universe, you will be surprised at who sort of shows up at your door. And when I did that, certainly there's organizations, not just Women in Cloud, there's, Women in Technology, Extraordinary Women in Technology, there's Women in STEM group, there's also Girls Who Code. I mean, there's all sorts of organizations. But when I sort of put it out into the ether, I started getting my male managers and bosses saying, hey, how can I help? One of my best mentors, male, was like, hey, what can I do to help? And brought him on stage. And he started being one of our best allies for Women in Cloud, as an example, and really helped sort of pave the way for a lot of business to contribute to that initiative. So put yourself out there, take a risk. So to say where you're interested in what you want to do, and it'll be amazing sort of what comes your way.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe the first step is to start talking. It's the power of your own voice. You've been listening to your voice the longest. So once you start hearing it, and then people start listening. So that might be a great first step. So thanks.
I 100% agree. Start having the conversation, sort of put your ideas, your thoughts, your goals sort of out in the universe, start to talk about that. And you will be surprised at how many people will both listen and take action.
Yeah. So that's a great point. And so, a couple more questions before we kind of jump into the main event. And one thing I would like to ask, if we take a few steps back, has there ever been a time during your career or your ascension when you had fear or doubt and proceeded anyway, or if you've gotten a little bit derailed by a setback? And do you mind sharing one of those?
Absolutely. Well, I think it would be, I would just challenge anyone to authentically say they've never had setbacks or doubts. I think I carry those almost every day, just to be fully transparent. And they can be minuscule things, and you have your inside voice being like, oh, can you really do this? And you have to train yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to sort of move on forward, even though a lot of times it could be fear, uncertainty, doubt, that inside voice, that sort of angel on the shoulder saying, don't do that, we don't want you to get hurt, and being sort of courageous enough to get through that. That being said, I have a lot of them. I have a lot of battle scars around sort of doubts and sort of derailments, but I'll share a couple just with the audience. I think first, I get a lot of questions on how do I continue to grow in my career, and how do I continue to be promoted, and how I continue to sort of rise to what I want to do. And I will tell you that for every opportunity that I have had, there has been many setbacks on opportunities I did not get. And I will just say, like, one of the first times that I was really trying to break into the executive ranks at Microsoft, I think I was turned down 2 or 3 times. I was turned down 2 or 3 times actually for male counterparts that got hired instead. And it was a good lesson for me, because I couldn't understand that if I had done the work and proven that my capability was there, that people would just magically see. And, thus I would sort of get sort of the opportunity that I felt was sort of coming to me. And the reality is just isn't like that. I had to learn a lot, that I had to sort of build this grit and sort of a mental toughness that I have to go after what I want, and I have to go after it with sort of that passion, if you will, and relentless pursuit of what's important and what's important for you from a purpose standpoint. And so I remember, the first time that I was, wanting to lead channels at Microsoft, and I got that as a no. And, a year back, I came back around and ended up leading one commercial partner for the Microsoft organization. And so my point being is that you can't give up on those setbacks. You have to continue to learn and get feedback, which is a gift. Understand sort of where maybe you're not showing up, what you might need to be doing, and learning to grow. But don't give up on what's important to you. Be focused on what your purpose is. What are the things that are going to give you joy in your career, by the way, and in your personal life? And those can be highly intertwined, as they are with me. And those things will come for you over time, but you have to be open. You have to pursue, and you have to really have that sort of mental toughness to get back up again. When you're sort of told you're not right for this, or you're not good enough for that, or you haven't like shown me what you can do there. I mean, there's so many words for no that I've had throughout my entire career. And I think if every time I listened to the no's, I probably wouldn't even be working at this point, to be honest with you, because there's been probably way more no's than there have been yeses. And I think it's that opportunity to build that resilience in you that sort of teaches you, hey, for the next time you have a no, how do you get up and how do you keep going? And what have you learned from that? And how do you continue to grow? And that's sort of been my philosophy and continues to be as I continue on my career. And I bring that into my personal life as well.
I love that you bring that up. We're talking the same language as far as mental toughness goes. And that is super, super important. And on the topic of courage, you made a remarkably courageous decision not too long ago. So can you walk us through that and that process that it took, and also what you are excited about at Splunk? And then we're going to ask you a couple questions about the main event.
Excellent. Well, I will say for everybody who has been sort of nervous to sort of take that next leap or next jump, I was right there with you as well. I was 18 years at Microsoft, loved every single minute of it, met incredible, talented people in the company and throughout the industry. But I wanted to sort of push myself to do the next thing. And, I didn't know what that was, could I really do it? And I think honestly, the industry might say, can you do it? If you've been somewhere 18 years, are you willing to learn? Are you willing to grow? Can you sort of change and adapt in these environments? And those are all the doubted questions of people. And, a little bit to your point on, be careful sort of who you get your advice from. And, on this particular thing, I will have to say my husband was one of my biggest champions. He's like, you have so much to give and you have so much still to learn. You have so much more to share. You just need to go for it and enjoy every minute. And so it's been an exciting opportunity to really go lead channel transformation again at a company that's on the precipice for unprecedented growth, and being able to bring the partner ecosystem into that company, Splunk, where we can then really scale and delight our customers and partners. So I couldn't be more thrilled to be the channel chief of Splunk. I couldn't be more thrilled to be able to take that leap and sort of do sort of V2 and what's next. And I encourage everyone, you don't be afraid of putting yourself out there and taking on new challenges. It won't always work, but if you don't try, you never get that opportunity. So that's kind of what led me to Splunk. And I'm just a little ways in and can't wait to circle back with you on how it's going.
Yeah, I can't wait to have the part two
Yes.
Interview. And it's exciting times for you and for Splunk. And I cannot think of a more incredible person. They're really lucky to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll definitely take you up on the V2. That will be fun.
Yeah. And I think it was Wayne Gretzky that said something like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
You don't take. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. And I think, while, I think everyone wants to be a little calculated and you want to be planful on what you do. And I appreciate all that. At some point, you just have to go for it and have enough belief in yourself that you can accomplish what you set out to do. And that's certainly one of the things I'm super excited about.
Yes, I cannot wait. And I'm sure that there will be nothing but great things ahead. And so for those watching that are, concerned with the reality that there are still biases in the workplace. Yeah. And this is why we were talking a little bit before we went live, why I love this topic, because while there's a heightened sense of awareness and change is happening in our companies, which is amazing, it seems like it's not happening quick enough. And it's, at least for my coaching and training and all these things I'm focused on, is really empowering women to manage fear and doubt, imposter syndrome, worthiness, all of these kind of cultural indoctrinations that were baked into our ethos, either how we were raised personally or what we witnessed in our mothers and our grandmothers and that type of thing. And so what is something, I'm excited to have this real conversation about what is women in the workplace, especially women who are further marginalized within our gender. How can we really, especially as women in technology, push through the biases that still exist and really rise and become an authority?
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually a little bit of a complicated one, I think. But when I think, let me just step back for a second, and then I'll sort of answer that question on what we can do. But just to put in perspective, just so you see what we're sort of dealing with, we've made great strides, as you had just mentioned, on sort of challenging that. And you look at just the education. I think of from the classroom to the boardroom is how I think about the pipeline of future women that are coming into the world. And then of course, how we continue to accelerate women that are actually in the technology world today to the boardroom. So we're already making great strides. We actually are now over surpassing men as it takes from a higher education level. I think 56% now are women graduates. However, only 17% of women are still in computer science degrees. What does that tell you? It means that, and I think you were bringing this up, it means that while we're still getting, I think, great progress and traction as females in general, when it comes to technology, you still see the bias, you still see the numbers, and they're not anywhere near the equity that we need. Now go all the way to the boardroom and to the C-suite. Now you go from 17% of a very small pipeline to the boardroom at like 7%. I mean, we have a long ways to go, not only getting our youth more comfortable with STEM-based capabilities and roles, which, by the way, technology now is not just in a technology industry. Technology is in every industry. Digital transformation is in every industry. And so whatever you choose to do, you're going to have it regardless. So we've got to get our women and our girls feeling comfortable with being uncomfortable, trying to seek out mentorship and people that can help, not being afraid to raise your hand in a room of men because you feel like you're asking the stupid question. Like, these are all these things that we've got to break in the education system first and foremost. We still have parents that are like, you can't take that math class because they can't help you with the math class. So all of a sudden you're like, you don't need to go take that advanced thing, or, you need to be thinking about a different field. So you have a lot of those biases that before we even get into workplace, that our girls are facing through the education system. So we've got to sort of break through that and get our girls in our, elementary K through 12 and higher education more comfortable to have a seat at the table when it comes to STEM education, first and foremost. Then you get into the workplace, right? Well, if you start with a small pipeline of experienced women in technology, what does that mean? As you go through the ranks, the pipeline is smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're now, in the single digits, battling for roles that are, that you really want to aspire to. But what's happening? We don't get the experience. We're not getting tapped on the shoulder to do some of these things. And so when it comes time for the big interview and comes time for sort of the big chance to do something next, sometimes it's really hard to say that you've done just as much things as your male counterpart, just because the opportunities that weren't there. So we have some work, to your point. I think corporations are coming around to the importance of it, but we have work as a community to make sure that we're taking advantage of that, and we're going for that, and we're helping each other in a sort of safety net, if you will, to be able to learn and grow, and have the courage to take those risks. So those are things that I think, I work really hard in the workplace. It's one thing to have numbers and really focus, to your point, on gender equality and gender equity, but it's another thing to take action and build in the infrastructure so that we can get everyone to be successful. Who are the mentors that are helping you? Who are the women executives that are reaching back down in the organization and making sure that sort of the next set of leaders are being set and ready to go? I think there's a lot we can be doing, a lot more that, quite frankly, we can do with each of us in the organizations that we're at, in helping each other and helping, quite frankly, the next set of leaders to come about. They don't have to fight as hard as we fought. And this perception that, oh, we got here because we sort of scratched and crawled and got here along the way, and so they should do that too. That's crazy. We should be working as hard as we can to lift up as many people as we can, because we all benefit as a community, but more importantly, we all benefit as an industry, because when you have diverse perspectives that come into technology, you have innovation that you have never even untapped before. And I think you're starting to see that in the numbers that are coming out in the VC community, a lot of women-owned business funds and venture funds coming to bear, and certainly a lot more women executives coming in to boardroom positions over time. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. And so for leaders, there's definitely a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. And, from a high performance perspective, we're forward thinking. So for leaders, whether you're a leader or you're an emerging leader, what do you think is the best way to be very proactive? Because I think a lot of times emerging leaders might wait for sponsorship, and possibly leaders might wait till someone is assigned to them or something's requested of them. And so can you recommend a way that either emerging leaders or senior leaders can be proactive, and what would help them to be, most effective?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing that I just want you to take note is sort of your point on waiting to be asked. A leader isn't waiting to be asked. And I think that's the very first amazing point that you just talked about, which is you need to take the initiative to go build what is important to you. I don't think anyone, and that was sort of my lesson of waiting to get the big job, I don't think anyone is going to have this ability to sort of read into your brain and understand what you want and what you want out of your life. You have to advocate for what you want and what you want out of your life. So first and foremost, don't be waiting. I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is when I reach out to a lot of female mentees and so forth, I ask them, who are your mentors today? Do you have mentors in a wide sort of variety of spaces? And first and foremost, start there, because you have a great opportunity to have protected conversations, honest and authentic conversations of what and how you want to go after things. And so I've always sought out mentorships, men and women, by the way, very important to have both in my career. And then sponsorship is something that it's hard to ask for, in my opinion. I think it's something that's a little bit more earned, and you have to be, in my opinion, really astute in understanding, hey, who's behind you supporting like the work that you're doing, and you can naturally sort of build those sponsorships up. How do you get started in that if you don't know? I encourage my teams, be a hand raiser, get out of your comfort zone. Be, volunteer for an ERG, volunteer to do something that may be out of your, traditional sort of job on a day-to-day. And you will find that you'll gain sponsorship through being that sort of volunteerism to really showcase what's passionate for you, what you are interested in, and then getting that sponsor to support you along the way. Sponsors come and go, and that always happens. And I think one of the things that you have to realize is that it isn't stagnant. You should never be just complacent with, oh, I have a sponsor. You want to continue to be growing. You want to continue to tap into different sponsors along the way and keep that, very, very fluid, and sort of continue to add those, into your tool belt.
100%. So just to reiterate, if you're thinking about this and this is resonating with you, number one, do not wait. Be proactive, get really clear on what's important to you, and raise your hand, volunteer. And then also, I think you brought up a great point, is that it's very fluid. So you could have a sponsor, but you want to continually evaluate your sponsor as they are evaluating you, which
Right.
I think sometimes, I love that you brought that up, because I think sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so, what do you want? You shared so many gold nuggets of wisdom, but of everything, what would you like to leave everyone with? What is a call to action that you like to request?
Well, I think there's a couple things, and I don't want to sort of overload, but I'm gonna start with like two, I think, important things. The first I sort of mentioned at the beginning, and I think it's really important. Don't be paralyzed in inaction because you don't know what the big thing you need to do to make an impact. It's the little things that matter, and the little things collectively as a community that make a big impact. And that can be reaching out to mentor someone. It could be, if you're more senior or seasoned, reaching out to sponsor. It could just be engaging in the local community in some way. Whatever that is in your passion project, like, just take action, I think, first and foremost. And then, the second one is, you got to be part of the dialogue. I love the fact, Sheryl, that you're doing this and that you're sharing this with everybody. How do we continue to have a dialogue, exposed, to your point, where the biases are and how to break those biases? Because it's only through sort of shining a light on sort of what still we have to do and having a collective conversation together that's going to really help us there. So be active, give me your thoughts, come talk to me on LinkedIn and whatnot, but continue to sort of be part of the conversation, whatever that looks like for you. And I think the combination of those two are an amazing start.
Yeah, I love that you share that. And one question that we'll try and squeeze in before we sign off, is that, for senior leaders, and I assume as a senior leader, the question is around. Uh, I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to put it.
You can
What
just say that. You can say it.
senior leadership is not on the bus. So in other words, trying to push through. And this is one thing that I really focus on, and my teaching and coaching is influencing up. So what would you recommend if you're trying to push through a major initiative, or really getting your senior leadership, your CO or what have you, to really get their buy-in and support, so it can be kind of a top-down rollout, but it's not going so well?
Yeah, if I had time, I would tell you one of those stories that, talk about, influencing up and the challenges there. Maybe that'll be on our next interview. But let me just close by saying, this is where allyship comes into play, and allyship in any form or shape or form. In other words, connecting and collaborating across the aisle with many people on what is important, that whether you're driving an initiative or you're trying to, like, start something new, or you're even trying to sort of break through on visibility of yourself, building out essentially allyship that have people, sort of promoting and supporting you in your name, throwing your hat in the name for you in terms of like recommendations, or even it can be as simple as like, you're in that executive review and it's not you, it's three other people saying, you know what, have you really looked at Gretchen's idea? Because we think it's awesome. And that goes so much more powerful than saying, hey, my idea is awesome. And so that allyship is a really, really important one. I know it's hard work. I know we've all sort of hit those ceilings and then tried to push and shatter through. So don't give up on that, for sure, but really getting collective allyship around what you want to do, I think, is something that's super important. That goes back to, again, voicing what you want, voicing sort of what your goals are. And again, you'll find that people will be really willing to help along the way if you sort of speak up.
That is so great. It seems like we have a lot to continue talking about for today. I really appreciate your time, sharing your wisdom. Best of luck. I have a feeling that 2023 is going to be extremely bright, and I look forward to following your journey.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you again, and thank you all for tuning in. It was just a pleasure.